So, Donald Trump endured a brutal day in court on Tuesday, even with the abbreviated schedule because of the Passover holiday. The former president was hit with a 1-2 punch of a morning hearing about possible gag order violations and then testimony about catch and kill deals to bury negative stories about the former president during the 2016 election. This is what happened. The former tabloid publisher David PECKER is going to return to the stand on Thursday after the court's dark on Wednesday. He testified about 2 of the 3 catch and kill deals, but not about the adult film star Stormy Daniels, which is likely to come up on Thursday. So let's talk about all of this. Ben Meiselas from the mighty Midas Touch Network. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. You have been following this. Can we talk about, what do you want to start? You want to talk about Trump's behavior in court, or you want to start with the witnesses? Where would you like to start?
I mean, look, there may or may not be a lot of gas going on in the courtroom, but there certainly is a lot of gaslighting taking place. You have Donald Trump's lawyer telling the judge, look, Donald Trump is doing everything he can, Your Honor, to try to comply with the gag order. He doesn't know what he should do. And the judge said to Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, Mr. Blanche, you are losing all credibility with this court right now. And the district attorney's office went through example by example of Donald Trump, not just attacking witnesses, but Donald Trump making statements about the jury, Donald Trump taking quotes or statements that were already inflammatory about the jury by Fox hosts. And Donald Trump would manipulate the statements and even make them kind of worse than things that the people didn't even say. And the judge pointed out like, hey, you know, Jesse Waters didn't even make that statement directed at the jury. Donald Trump just took what he said and put it in quotes and then posted it. To which Donald Trump's lawyer said, so is there anything wrong with that? I mean, why can't you just repost statements that are made, and even if they're changed? And the judge is like, do you have any case law for what you're saying? Like, what are you even talking about, Mr. Blanche? You know, and Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, let's be clear, was a very kind of credible lawyer with a good reputation in New York before this. But seeing any type of lawyer behave that way, you know, is ridiculous. And we've heard reports that Todd Blanche looks just utterly miserable in court. So that was in the morning. And then, Don, you had, of course, David PECKER, the first witness, take the stand, who really kind of laid out the whole case in the narrative.
Okay, before we get to David PECKER, let's talk about that, because you said that the judge told him that you're losing all credibility. The judge went on, too. I mean, he was harsher than that. He said, you presented nothing. You have presented nothing. You are losing all credibility with the court. He's telling it that he has done. The thing is, what he's telling him, though, is that if you're in this courtroom, Ben, he's saying that you have to abide by the facts. I know Donald Trump doesn't like to abide by facts. Like, he has to make up his own reality. But when you're in a courtroom in front of a judge and jury, not only Donald Trump, but his lawyers, they're going to have to present examples of reality and fact. Otherwise, it doesn't fly in a courtroom.
Yeah, and look, we've seen this with all of these, you know, Trump cases where they say things outside of the court that have no evidentiary support. Then they go into court and, you know, Donald Trump tries to like wave these news articles that he's having right-wing media report on, which is basically just a modern version of what the National Enquirer was doing in 2015 and 2016. And Trump saying, look, this is... Why can't we introduce this? Because that's not evidence. That's your own propaganda. And you go to the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. There, the judge, different judge, Justice Engoron, it's not that he didn't like Donald Trump. He just said, show me a scintilla of evidence, show me a declaration that supports anything it is that you're saying. And here, too, they're not showing evidence. They're just making these, you know, blind assertions. And the judge is saying there's no evidentiary support for anything that you're saying. This is a court of law. And that's why Donald Trump and the whole MAGA movement, why they hate courts and why they seek to undermine it. Yeah. Because what works on Fox News, if you even want to call it that, what works on Newsmax, it doesn't work in a court where you have to test the evidence and where hearsay isn't allowed. And that's why I have, Don, such great reverence, I mean, as a lawyer, for really the rule of law. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, if a fair and impartial jury decides that Donald Trump did not commit these crimes, I will ultimately respect that verdict by the jury, but I respect our system and our process, and I want our process to work. And Donald Trump wants to break that system, and his lawyers, the way they behave to represent him is in a way that tries to break that system. And to me, that's the part that's unacceptable here, regardless of what political affiliation you have.
I just want to clarify, because this was a gag order hearing that we're talking about, and it was examples of when Trump was specifically responding to attacks he believed from Michael Cohen and from Stormy Daniels on social media, and he grew visibly frustrated. The judge did when Blanche failed to comply. But listen, this is what.
Yeah, but Don, even right there, what the judge pointed out was that was not true. Yeah. Donald Trump would attack the witnesses, and then the witnesses would make a statement that then responded to Donald Trump's attack.
And he would call it an attack.
Yeah. And then they would go tit for tat, and then Donald Trump would just he and his lawyers would say, look, Donald Trump's just defending himself. But ultimately, the judge says that's not what's happening. And by the way, those witnesses are not criminal defendants. Donald Trump's the defendant in this case. There was a time where Cohen was a defendant, and Cohen did solitary confinement, and he did his time. Stormy Daniels is not a criminal defendant. Trump's the defendant, and you have to behave yourself like any criminal defendant would in a court of law.
Are his lawyers doing him a disservice with how they responded to this, what they're doing in court?
I think he's someone who you truly can't represent. I mean, he showed time and time again, he's pushed good lawyers out. I mean, the lawyer before Todd Blanche on this case, you may remember, was Joe Tacopina. And Joe Tacopina basically said, look, I can't represent this guy anymore. I've searched my moral conscience. He made a statement like that. I can't be on this case. So Trump drives out good lawyers, and then he kind of tortures anybody else on his legal team that tries to conform themselves to the basic legal norms. So then you have Donald Trump being left with people like he was on the E. Jean Carroll case. I mean, he had Alina Habba as his lawyer, and Alina Habba did not know how to even introduce evidence. And the federal judge is like, you may want to read a book on evidence about how you establish a foundation and how you just even conduct yourself in a courtroom. And now Todd Blanche is seeing that, no matter what he does, Donald Trump at the end of court will go out there, and Trump will also start just making incriminating statements about himself as well. And Trump will say things like, I did it. My lawyer's fault. They did it. My accountant did it. Well, you're not making an advice of counsel defense either. And so you're just digging the hole deeper. So I don't think Blanche is doing it. I'm not sure what Blanche, could do other than say, I'm not representing this guy.
Well, that's my question, because you said, that's the kind of client that he is. I'm wondering what your advice would be to Donald Trump, how you would represent him at least, because I don't think he wants to be presented as, his lawyers may want to present him. I think he wants to be presented as he's above the law or he did nothing wrong, whatever. I'm not sure. But how would you represent him, and what advice would you have for him if you were indeed representing him?
Yeah, I would never represent him. By the way, I think it's okay for criminal defense lawyers to represent people accused of the worst things. I will never conflate the lawyer with their client. It is an important role in our system of justice to have criminal defense lawyers. The problem with Trump, which makes it different from everything I just said, is that Donald Trump is trying to rip to shreds our very system. He does not want to play by the rules of evidence and the judge and the jury. He wants to think that he's above that, attack the jury every day, attack the judge, attack the judge's daughter. I can never represent someone who did that. And by the way, I understand why you would have criminal defense lawyers, though, represent people accused of the most heinous crimes. Mm-hmm. But once that lawyer starts acting, Don, extrajudicially and starts acting like the way Alina Habba, Trump's lawyers, does. I mean, you have Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, posting things on her social media saying "Have a nice day, bitches," with all the, and I'm like, and I'm just thinking to myself, Don, like you're a lawyer, why are you behaving this way? Like, you're a officer of the court. Like, behave like a normal, like, behave like a lawyer. And that's why I would never give him advice. I would never represent him. Although I certainly understand why there are lawyers who represent pretty bad people.
But do you think, I mean, again, this is the first time I think that Donald Trump has to give credence to facts. And it's just anathema to him and the MAGA movement and the right wing, the far right wing of the Republican Party. Although the Republican Party now is MAGA. I mean, MAGA has taken over the Republican Party. But it is the first time that he sort of had to deal with facts. It's almost like, Dorian Gray finally, seeing the painting in his basement and, he's a monster. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Don, you've reported on Trump for a very long time. And anytime you would have well-sourced reports using facts, Trump and his team and all the MAGAs would attack you and say, fake news, fake news, fake news. What we're seeing at the trial is Donald Trump quite literally had a meeting with the head of the National Enquirer about creating fake news, creating and generating fake articles.
He created fake news. He's the one who created fake news, right?
And you don't have to even just take my word for it or Don Lemon's word for it. Take David Pecker's word for it. Mm-hmm. All of those articles that were taking place in 2015 and 2016, Ted Cruz has the affairs with all of these mistresses. Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. Rubio this, Rubio that. All the things, except perhaps killing JFK, that Donald Trump was accusing Ted Cruz of with the mistresses and Rubio, Trump was actually doing those things. And so David Pecker laid out during his testimony, I met with Donald Trump. We came up with a plan. Trump was a micromanager. Here was what we would do. I would get fed these stories from Trump. In order for me to help Trump's 2016 campaign and interfere with the 2016 election, here are the stories that I was writing that Trump told me to write. And I wrote them. I knew they were false, and I was doing it to help Trump win in 2016. And then our plan evolved. And it was not just to write stories, but then to kill stories, which was to purely benefit Donald Trump in 2016 by finding bad stories about Donald Trump, like women he was having sex with and doormen who may have bad stories, paying them off and not publishing those stories so that they would never see the light of day. Pecker laid that all out. And Pecker is Trump's guy. Trump had a watch there, stewing in his you-know-what, watching David Pecker, his own guy, lay out the story of here are the crimes that we committed. Here's how we did it. And that's what happened in David Pecker's testimony.
And he has to sit there, you're right. And Stu, but look, just so folks know, Donald Trump running for president, 2016, that summer, he goes down the escalator, he announces he runs for president. Weeks later, Pecker comes in, right, to the picture because there are these stories out there, possibly that he had, a baby or something with someone who worked at like Trump Tower, right? Was it a maid or something that worked at Trump Tower? And then,
a doorman.
Okay, someone who worked at Trump Tower. And then they find out about the affair with Karen McDougal. They want to squash that. AMI pays her $150,000. Stormy Daniels as well. They know about Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen pays her $130,000. David Pecker was the perfect first witness because it sort of lays out the timeline of none of this. You weren't trying to kill any of these stories when you weren't running for president. So the moment you you put your hat into the ring, all of a sudden the head of the National Enquirer comes in to try to catch stories, kill them, and then spread disinformation about your challengers. He's the perfect person to come in and lay out the case, the whole case.
Think about the January 6th committee. You heard from 99% were Trump's people, were Trump's inner circle. That was the testimony there. Here, before Michael Cohen ever testifies, I think you're going to hear from other people in Trump's inner circle or Trump's closest pals. Like Pecker is a Trump guy. Pecker and Trump go way back even before 2015. For 20 years, they were helping each other, planting stories. They were doing the whole shoulder-to-shoulder New York, Manhattan thing. That's what they were in that business together. And so they then planned this thing. They came up with this deal together. I mean, they had a meeting. Pecker laid it out. We had a deal. It wasn't just that these stories fortuitously fell in Pecker's lap. Part of the deal was we're going to write, to help you win in 2016, we're going to write bad stories about your political opponents, and we are going to affirmatively find, because Trump, you have a very small team. You know, the Trump organization is very small. It's really just Trump and his kids. And the National Enquirer was like, we at AMI and our parent company, we've got a big team. So we're going to put our team out there and we're going to hunt. We're going to look for these stories. We're going to try to find them. And so that's what they would do. They were basically like working as private detectives to catch and kill the bad stories on behalf of Trump and paying these people off to help Trump win in 2016. Not only Pecker, though, I think you're going to hear Hope Hicks, who's as close to Donald Trump as anybody. She was in the room where it happened. You're going to hear from Trump's inner circle and team. And then by the time Cohen testifies, it's just going to corroborate what everybody else around Donald Trump said. You know, one of the reasons that I'm disappointed that this Washington, D.C. federal criminal case has been delayed, there's going to be a Supreme Court oral argument this week, is because the testimony of Trump trying to overthrow the 2020 election. In New York, we're talking about 2016. In D.C., we're talking about 2020. It's all Trump's people. The key witness is Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's former chief of staff. So this isn't, whenever you hear from MAGA, oh, this is the liberals and the Dems and the people with Trump derangement syndrome. No, it's Donald Trump's closest pals. It's Donald. You couldn't be closer to Trump than these people. They're the ones who are testifying against him. And that goes back to what we said when we started this interview, Don, that facts and evidence matters. And Trump and his team have created this extrajudicial fake news world versus what's happening in the courtroom. And we all have to stay focused what's happening in the courtroom.
So is it fair to say Trump is fake news?
Trump's whole thing is propaganda. Trump has taken the tactics that we as a country used to look at, whether it was Gaddafi in Libya, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-un's dad and grandfather in North Korea. We used to look at that, Don, and we would mock it, right? Sacha Baron Cohen would make movies about that. South Park would do movies. We would look at that stuff in other countries and say, not here in the United States of America. Donald Trump brought that here to the United States of America, and that's now embodied in a once proud political party that was the Republican Party that's now MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. We need to be for law and order. We need a system of justice. We need to be pro-democracy. That's not political. And that's why I do it. That's why I do this. It's like,
yeah, fighting for democracy. Listen, I respect that you're fighting for democracy. Trump is the father of fake news, and that not like, he says that other people are fake news, but I know you are, but what am I, right? So just real quickly, you sound pretty confident about this. I know that you don't like to predict, but you think the evidence is there. How does this end up? How does this case end up? Does Trump go to jail? Is he going to be found guilty or convicted? What do you think?
Look, I think he's going to be convicted, but, right now my focus is each witness, hearing what they have to say. A trial is a very fluid process. I mean, from all of the evidence that I'm aware of and that I've seen from what's happened in the court to what we know should be happening over the next few days, I think Donald Trump gets convicted. We've already heard that the Secret Service is planning what that would look like if Donald Trump is put in prison. I think Justice Merchan is no nonsense. He's not going to treat Trump favorably or different when it comes to, I think he would order Donald Trump to go to prison. I think the governor of New York will have to come up with a protocol for what that would ultimately look like. But look, what's most important to me is a fair and impartial jury, hearing the evidence each and every day. I'm not rooting, I'm not trying to cheer on, convict him because I don't like him. I mean, I want them to follow the law and follow the evidence and make the right decision, which I ultimately think will result in a Trump conviction. But that's how I see it.
All right. Well, there you have it. Ben Meiselas from the mighty Midas Touch Network. We watch you. Everything that you post and that you stream, we watch, and we love you guys over there at the Midas Touch Network, and we appreciate you appearing on the Don Lemon Show. We'll see you next time.
We appreciate you. We love what you're building, and make sure everybody subscribes to Don's channel as well.
Thank you. That goes for the Mighty Midas. And maybe one or two people who are, part of the Lemon Nation that haven't subscribed to you, but, I'm sure it's only one or two. Thank you, Ben.
I don't think so.